Welcome to the Soul Tribe Podcast. The Soul Tribe Podcast was created to help you navigate through the world of spirituality, wellness, and self-development in an easy, grounded, and relatable way. We break down everything from the Akashic Records, manifesting, spirituality, and so much more. We want to help expand your boundaries and bring the spiritual world to you in a fun and easy way. Get ready to be inspired with tips, tools, and easy to digest information. Let's do this.
Welcome back to the Soul Tribe Podcast. This is Lorena, and I have a solo episode for you all today. We're going to be talking all about inner child healing the inner child wound. I'm not sure exactly what the name of this podcast episode is going to be, but it's going to be all about our inner child and healing that. And the reason I've kind of decided to do a solo episode about this is because it's been coming up more and more during my Akashic Record readings and sessions. And it's something that I can't get away from. And I think I kept feeling this like kind of nudge from my masters and guides to be like, you need to at least talk about this. I've also been called to create a meditation, which will be up sometime this week as well. So I'll definitely post on the show notes. I'll put my link to my YouTube. I'll be posting it on there. And I'm going to actually do it in Spanish and English. That's also something that I've been feeling more called to do, just to create more content in Spanish and kind of like, not that I'm going to create different content in Spanish, but more like create it at the same time and like syncing with it and making sure that people have access to it, whatever language they speak. So let's get right into this episode where we're really just going to start talking about what, to understand ourselves as humans. We're obviously incarnated in this life, and as little children, as we come into this life, all we want to be really is just understood, loved, accepted, nurtured. We all want to feel safe, right? And if any of these things are missing from our childhood, our upbringing, this can cause a lot of trauma. And trauma is like an interesting word, right? Because many times we think, if it's trauma, it has to be this really, like very in your face thing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. Like getting scolded by your mom or your dad and feeling neglected, or just not having that safe space when you were growing up, that can be traumatic too. So I want to open up that meaning of trauma, because I know sometimes we can go into a reading, for example, into a session, or we're just with ourselves and we're like, well, I didn't have a bad upbringing, right? My childhood was great. I felt like I was happy, but there might have been things that we don't even remember that caused some kind of trauma. So, bullying, abuse, neglect, all those things can really have an impact on who we are today and how we're acting out, our limiting beliefs, the way we're just projecting things into our life and what we're able to, or how we're able to live. It's going to really hold us back or set us free. So the idea here is that we need to process these emotions. We need to process this stuff from our childhood so that now in the present, we can all feel like we're ourselves, we're our authentic self, and we're able to create the life that we want and feel not only joy and happiness, but feel free. So I just want to kind of say this now, because I know many of you are probably listening thinking you probably may not have had any kind of inner child wound or never had any traumatic, but all of us have experienced this. This is what brings us together. We've all had a childhood. We've all had an upbringing, some of us harder than others, but it is something that I think all of us have experienced to one extent or another. And like I was saying, this can be so different for everybody. Like my trauma will be different from yours and from the experiences I've had that maybe created trauma in my life. So this can be anything from like getting your favorite stuffed toy or your doll taken away from you and thrown away, to, feeling like your best friend when you were little just disappeared because maybe they moved, or being physically or emotionally abused by your parents or a family member. That being said, a lot of us might associate childhood trauma with our parents, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, right? It could have been a family member, a neighbor, it could have been just a friend, right? It can be any kind of person that we held as important in our life or that was a part of our life when we were growing up. So, this podcast is a lot about spirituality, and I don't think that we can really grow and expand in our spiritual awakening and in our journey if we're not healing these wounds, these inner child traumas, and looking at our inner child and healing that. I feel like there's always going to be a part of us that's going to be held back, and we really need to connect with that. That's why I also felt like this episode was really important. So really, when we can connect with our inner child, and that's something that I've been doing more and more in my sessions, and also a lot of homework that people need to do, and I've had to do in the past as well, and I feel like I still need to do. And, it's like we're able to put all the pieces together about ourselves and our life. So many of us can find that, especially with inner child stuff, that there's these deep-rooted fears and phobias, maybe even insecurities, or, these repetitive patterns, or self-sabotaging ourselves. And that may all be coming from that inner child that's wounded. So it is super liberating. It is super just expansive for us to connect with that energy of our inner child, acknowledge them, and be able to work with them. So I kind of like to look at them as our equal. They're within us. And when we start acting out from their fears, their trauma, then it feels kind of like we're disconnected from ourselves, because they're acting out in that way because we're not acknowledging them. We're not taking care of them. We're not doing the work that we need to do, right? So it's interesting. I don't know. I've had so much resistance in the past with working with my inner child, and I still do. And I know a lot of us, and especially some clients, that tell me like, oh my gosh, I feel like this kind of like thing of like, I don't know the exact word for it, but it's more like, I don't know. I just feel like this fear, or this, I don't want to do it, or just this resistance, right? And that's super normal. And that's because we don't want to look at all that stuff. Our ego is like, don't go to the past. Let's just move forward. But the reality is that we can't move forward if we're not looking at that and we're not connecting with it. And I think really many times we can feel scared or stressed, or there's so many, like, especially what I see in readings is like repetitive patterns, right? Many times that is our inner child that's wounded. So I'm going to go through just a few examples of what childhood trauma could have looked like, or what it could have been for some of you. And of course, this is just some examples. It could be way deeper and way more expanded. And the perspective here really is just kind of more common things that I've seen. So physical abuse for sure. Parents that are emotionally unavailable. So that can be in different ways, from physical to just withholding love and affection, to just not being there physically sometimes too. So you feel like you've been abandoned in some way. Being kind of with the physical abuse, it's like being hit, or, kind of physically hit by a parent that could have made you feel unworthy, or made you feel like there's something wrong with you, or that you can't do things right. So then the self-esteem component comes in there, right? So then we can go into more of the sexual abuse, molestations, all of that kind of stuff that, of course, is super heavy. Divorce in parents, right? Like our parents divorcing many times can feel like they don't love us. We can also start to feel guilty within ourselves, like we did something. So that can be super traumatic within a childhood. And like I was saying, many times it depends really. But to me, this childhood trauma can be anywhere from like the moment you were born, maybe even in the womb. And I see this a lot actually. Within the womb. So you are not actually physically born yet, but there is abuse, and there's something that your mother, for example, is experiencing. And I've talked about that in past episodes. I'll link that in the show notes so you can listen to that if you're interested. But it's more like from the moment you were born until you're about 7. But that being said, I do feel like that can extend forward. Sometimes it can go into our teen years and we can really repress things. And maybe something that happened when we were 5 gets triggered when we were like 14, and then the cycle continues. So yeah, the age really depends, but generally we're like little sponges. We're discovering ourselves when we're so little, and up to age 7, it's a crucial time. So when any of these things happen, like we're saying, like physical abuse or feeling neglected by your parents, that can hit us really hard. And then we can start to really incorporate that into ourselves. And then we have to heal that, right? So abandonment, like I was mentioning, is another childhood trauma that we can look at. Emotional neglect, like I mentioned, being bullied or abused verbally by your family members. It could be your mom, your dad, an uncle, an aunt, anybody, a grandparent. Maybe even having excessive demands from your parents and feeling like there's tons of responsibility on you that really doesn't correspond to you having them, because let's say your mom's not there and she's working all day and you have to take care of your family, like your little brother, your little sister. Humiliation, things like that, right? There's so many, I can name probably hundreds. And of course, everybody's so unique and everybody's story is so unique, and our soul contracts are so different that it's hard to kind of name them all here. But I just wanted to give you like an idea of what those could be. I've seen within readings from something so, in our mind, our ego would be like, that's so small, but it affected you in a way that hit you really hard, right? And all of a sudden your inner child's wounded. So really the idea here is that we're going to be able to do that inner child work with some of this trauma. And like I said, this could be any part of your family, extended family, maybe family, friends, neighbors, right? Or even in your childhood with your friends. That could also be where some of this inner child wounding comes in. And really, why do we need to work with our inner child? And I think that's important to kind of state here because, I'm doing this episode all about it, but also I feel like more and more this is coming up because we all need to go that deep and we all need to connect with that side of ourselves. And essentially, it is a huge part of our spiritual awakening. And that's why I'm talking about this on this episode. But also, we're carrying all this pain, right? All this wounding. This is creating tension. This is creating blockages. This is creating like constrictions in our heart, our mind, our bodies, right? So we're needing to really work through that and not allowing our ego to get in the way. So when we're in this energy of this wounding, we really can't be ourselves. We really can't fully live this life from this place of abundance or this place of freedom. It's many times our ego is well, obviously it's affecting our ego, but our ego is that source of us feeling not enough, or feeling that we can't accomplish things, or feeling that we're not loved or not lovable, or that we can't create the life that we want. And really, when we are stuck in that energy and that wounding, it's going to hold us back. It's going to definitely hold us back. And, like Lucy and I always talk about on this podcast, we always want everybody to work on themselves. We're constantly doing that for not only for your spiritual journey, but for you to live this happy, fulfilled, free life, to do what you need to do and to connect with your mission and purpose. This inner child work is going to be super important, not only in your spiritual awakening journey, but also to be able to expand, to heal, to awaken even further, to connect with yourself even further, to be able to be a better channel, all of it is part of that. So we can't keep this part of the equation out. We need to take this into consideration, and we need to really do that work. What is inner child work? So I actually got a little quote here. Oh, it's kind of a quote. It's part of a quote. And I don't know if any of you really know this Swiss psychologist, Carl Jung. He viewed like the person's inner child as this kind of innocent, sensitive, and full of wonder kind of part of ourselves, right? And he really says that inner child work focuses on healing childhood traumas in adulthood by reconnecting to lost, stolen, or forgotten parts of our younger selves to identify wounds. I think this is a really good way of kind of explaining it, I guess, and looking at this inner child of ours as this innocent kind of part of ourselves that's sensitive and really just needs attention and needs love and needs acknowledgement, right? So we need to work through that, because otherwise there's a part of ourselves that we're denying, that we're not connecting with. We have to also have sympathy, we have to have compassion, and we have to really connect with our inner child as if we're like nurturing them, we're mothering them, we're giving them what they need. And this is why it's important to connect with them, so we can figure out what it is that they're needing and being able to ask them that. So like I was saying, from about the moment you're born to about the age of 7, that's like the imprinting period. So this is where most of us start to incorporate these beliefs. And those could be really good beliefs, or those could be low vibrational beliefs. It depends, right? And if any of you have done the To Be Magnetic work, Lacey Phillips, she has an interesting and amazing program all about manifesting, and she goes a lot into shadow work with your inner child. And she also says this, right? It's from that moment in your birth to about 7, maybe until you're about 14 or 12. That's like when you're developing, right? Our brain is like this sponge. Like, even I like to remind people sometimes when I moved to the States, right? I was 5. I didn't speak any English, but a month later I was speaking fluent English. We're sponges. Everything around us, we're absorbing, and we can't really analyze that information. We just take it in. So sometimes that can be within our kind of family unit. It can be super traumatic. There can be a lot of emotional things going on that are out of our control. And if we're going through certain things, like, for example, a divorce in our parents, or our parents neglecting us, that can be super hard. Some of us might have had an upbringing that was way difficult in the sense of the interaction between our family and the kind of environment we were in. And other of us might have thought, well, it was okay, but there were still things that you felt that you didn't get, that you needed when you were a child. But we're not able to really rationalize that, right? So we just take all that as I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, so my parents don't love me, or I have to keep doing all these things so that they accept me and they love me. And then we're not really authentically ourselves. We're living out of this fear, out of this pain, out of this self-doubt. And we start to come up with these coping skills or defense mechanisms, like I like to call them. And this is going to help us survive and to make sure that our needs are met. And sometimes when we know deep down inside that our caregiver or a friend or a family member can't give us what we need, we start to rely on ourselves. So we start to maybe block ourselves off, or start to just live life differently. And this many times can be from an emotional place. It's I shut myself off. I don't rely on my parents anymore, so I can only rely on myself. And then that later on in life could look something like, well, I have to do everything myself. And maybe you find a partner, but you never fully open up to them because you always think that they're going to let you down or they're going to abandon you. So that's how deep things can go, and how sometimes we're living this life now in the present, and we think this is normal to feel this way, and it might not be. It might be that inner child that's wounded. All of this trauma affects us as adults. That is 100% true. I've seen it time and time again. That information comes through so clearly through readings. It's our responsibility to start to piece those things together. It's kind of tricky, right? Because sometimes we think we're just, we had a relationship that really hurt us, so now I've shut myself off. But that might only be reminding us of what happened in the past. So inner child work is the process, the practice, maybe that's probably a better word, of connecting with our inner child, giving them that nurturing energy, healing them, understanding them, really just giving them the attention, the acknowledgement that they need. Because if we think about this energy of how we came into the world, we're this beautifully innocent, open, kind of energy, and we're here to experience life with no fear, with nothing. Just this pure joy, like I was saying, innocence, playfulness. Like that's such a beautiful thing. If we look at kids, we kind of can connect with our own essence in that way. And knowing that we need to reconnect with that. If something's happened in our life that's hurt us, that's made us feel like crap, right? We're really, as kids, a lot of us are feeling like we repress things. I can say that for myself too. I repressed a lot of emotions growing up. I felt like I needed to just be good and not make my parents' life impossible. They never told me that. I felt that by the way that Lucia and I both came into this world. Lucia was really sick. I think I've mentioned this in the podcast before. And internally, I just went into this, well, I have to be good. I have to make sure I don't make it harder for mom and dad. And I went really inward a lot. And I think that is something that made me repress emotions and just be like, where I just have to deal with it. And that can be really difficult. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. But that in essence, that doesn't make me feel good, right? I have to realize, and I've realized that being able to communicate, connect with those emotions, honor them, and know that I'm worthy of expressing those, be it anger or fear or just anything really, is going to help me. It's going to help me feel better about myself and honor myself even more. You know, if we think about ourselves today, there's many things that we're probably acting out on through our inner child. And we don't have to live that way. We can live from a more present, healed way and start to just align with what we're here to do. But that inner child's probably scared and doesn't want to risk things or make decisions or open their hearts up because they think they're going to be hurt and they're scared. And I think the more we can do that inner work, the more free we're going to be, the more spiritually connected we're going to be. And we can't separate ourselves from that inner child. That's something I've realized more and more. We're living through that inner child today if we haven't fully healed it. Inner child work is, like I was mentioning, it's going inward, connecting with our inner child, talking to our inner child, looking at pictures of us when we were little, maybe. But to me, the big thing here is the acknowledgement. I acknowledge you're there. I see you. I connect with you. I talk to you, maybe. I write you a letter. There's different ways. So I'll get into some of the ways that we can work with our inner child as well. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast episode, I'm going to be doing a very simple meditation because I keep feeling like there's moments when I do readings that we don't get to do that. And I feel like I need to help people at a larger scale with this inner child work. So I'm going to create a few different examples of these kind of guided meditations where you can just sit, listen to them, and connect with your inner child. And it'll kind of guide you through different scenarios and different things. And I think it'll be really helpful for some of you. So watch out for that. Make sure you do kind of check out my YouTube channel. It'll be on there. So some ways that you can work with your inner child is, for one that comes up time and time again through readings, it's speaking to your inner child, acknowledging them and speaking to them. This can look like sitting in meditation or doing a little bit of breath work, sitting in meditation and imagining your inner child kind of in front of you or sitting by your side and you connecting with their energy. So however they show up, don't put any rules to it. Just connect with their vision of yourself when you were a little boy or a little girl, when you were little, right? And making sure that you feel that connection, that it's authentic. It might be a little bit difficult at the beginning, like I was saying. It doesn't feel natural. It feels like uncomfortable many times. And when you speak to your inner child, maybe you kind of first connect with their energy and figure out what it is they need, right? Are they sad? Are they angry? Are they scared, like in a little corner? Like, what are they doing? And connecting with that and just kind of sending them this energy of compassion and that you're there for them, that you're holding space for them, and then telling them that you love them or that you're here for them, that you're sorry that that you haven't connected with them, but that you're always here for them. Telling them that they're forgiven. There's so many things that we can say. This really depends on how you feel that your inner child, or like what you feel your inner child needs. I think for some of us, this could be really hard, this speaking to your inner child. So something that I felt that helped me on my journey was writing my inner child a letter. And it doesn't matter what age or, what part of that journey of growing up that it was. It could be different ages when you do this work. Maybe one day you're like, oh, I connected with myself when I was 3. And another time it's when I was like 5. And another time it's when I was 10. And all these random things can come up. So if this meditation isn't working all the time, I would say write them a letter, connect with them, communicate through journaling maybe, and asking them how they feel. Maybe if you're already opening your own Akashic records, this could be a good time to do that. Do your little meditation, connect with your Akashic records, or connect with your higher self, and start to ask your inner child some questions. Tell them what you need to tell them, right? I'm here for you, I love you. And start to do that I want to say kind of on a daily, but it doesn't have to be every single day. I think even doing it a few times a week just to start and get comfortable with this practice could be really good. Another way we can work with our inner child is mirror work. And this was something that I remember years ago. Oh my gosh, like one of the first readings I ever had with the reader I have back in Uruguay, she was talking about my inner child. I'm like, what does that mean? I don't understand. And she kept telling a bunch of stuff came up of my inner child and it all made sense. I was like, wow, that's so spot on. And then she was telling me that I had to do mirror work. Oh my gosh. I remember sitting down many times and trying to speak to my inner child through the mirror work. So I'd sit in front of a mirror and kind of look in my eyes, which is already hard enough. And just looking really just lovingly into my own eyes and connecting with my inner child and telling her everything she needed to hear, that she was loved and that she was safe and that everything was okay and that she didn't have to worry and that she could just be herself. Even just saying, I see you, I'm proud of you. That was the thing I remember saying a lot. You're acknowledged, you're here, you're safe. I think we also have to kind of use our intuition and really go into this work feeling it, really feeling it. Sometimes you'll cry. Sometimes you're going to feel really sad. Sometimes you're going to just feel different things. Each time you do it, it depends. But allowing those emotions to arise, don't fight them. Don't push them back. Allow them to just come up. And this could be something you do every day for a couple of minutes, like maybe 5-10 minutes, really just connecting with that side of ourselves. It's interesting. Maybe even closing your eyes at the end of that and imagining that inner child of yours right in front of you and you hugging them and telling them that you love them so much and that they're seen and that they're safe. I think the safety is a huge thing for this inner child in general, because there's a reason they're not able to show up as who they are, right? There's circumstances and things that's happened that has made them feel unloved or unlovable, or that they're not safe or scared, right? So figuring out what you need, this is where the journaling might come in. Maybe you first start with journaling and you sit down and you connect with that inner child through a little bit of meditation, maybe the meditation I create, and then writing down everything that you think or you feel that inner child's going through. Maybe even remember circumstances and things, and it brings that up and you can write those down and really just feel through them. And then you can do the inner work, you can do the visualization. The visualization I'll get to in a little bit, but yeah, I think that mirror work's a really good one. It can be a really uncomfortable one, but one that could be super effective if we really go into it with really feeling it and really opening our hearts to it. The next one is looking at a picture of yourself. And I think this is one that I used as well a lot. Back home, I remember doing this a lot and having a picture of myself stuck on my mirror or in my wallet and being able to just look at her and look at how innocent she was and how things were how she felt, right? Because a lot of times if we don't have that physical, maybe some of you can't even imagine that version of yourself when you were little, or a baby, or a little child. And the photo can really help us connect with that side of ourselves. So really bringing in that photo or that image, maybe it's on your computer, maybe it's printed, and putting it near a place at maybe your desk, maybe your side table, maybe it's on your fridge or your bathroom mirror, wherever that is that you feel like you're going to be able to do it. And that could be really good if you're doing the mirror work to have that photo there. And it's really reminding you that inner child's always there with you, always, regardless if your inner child's wounded or not. That inner child's inside of us. What I used to do really was having that picture and also journaling with that, or writing her a letter with that picture there. That helped me feel a little bit more connected to her. Another really good way of connecting with our inner child is thinking about those things that we used to love, right, when we were little. Did you used to love playing with a specific toy, or bike riding, or just being outside and sitting in the grass? Or was there something that you can really identify with, like an activity, or maybe it was drawing, right? Maybe it was painting, maybe it was being really creative. How can we start to bring those activities back in so we can start to connect to that side of ourselves? We have to kind of do those physical things so that we can not only open up to that playfulness inside of ourselves, but to be able to sit with ourselves while we're doing that, and to feel like we can let go a little bit. And that's beautiful. And that can really bring in not only some joy in our life, regardless of if we're using it to not only connect, but just to have fun. It reminds us of that inner child, and it helps us connect with that side of ourselves that many times a lot of us lose touch with, right? It's, I'm here, I'm working, I'm grinding, I'm living my life, I'm doing all those things, I have my routines, but where's the playfulness? That little child inside of you wants to have fun, and we're not allowing them to have fun. So this could be a really good way, maybe even to start here too, with the journaling and just the playfulness, like the activities. For me, I know it was like, for example, drawing. I was very artsy and crafty. I used to love just sitting for hours and doing really just artistic things. And I've started to bring that in a little bit more in the last couple of years, with just doing things every now and then and just enjoying it and getting in the flow, and with no expectation, right? Because it's like, well, when we were little, we just thought everything was beautiful. And our parents probably said, wow, that's so nice. And how can we not do that with ourselves now? It doesn't have to be perfect. It's, how are you just enjoying it? How are you just enjoying those things that you're doing? That could be a really good one, I think, for a lot of us to start to do that more just in our everyday life and really connect with ourselves. This is a huge part of us also finding our inner child and connecting with it, because if we're in this structure, in these rules, our child's not going to want to come and connect with us. Our inner child wants to have fun. So we bringing in that fun and those things that they enjoyed when they were little could really help us with part of this work. Sometimes within my Akashic record readings, there'll be a lot of inner child trauma or inner child work that the masters and guides are bringing forward. And one way that I help that person during the session, this isn't every session, it depends on what messages I'm getting and the amount of time that I have with that person. But many times we'll go through this visualization work. So we'll do this kind of connecting to our inner child. It's quite a quick process. And part of the reason that I'm doing that meditation is to do a little bit of that visualization work with you, so I don't have to be in a session with you. And it's a lot of just sitting first, maybe doing a little bit of breath work, sitting and meditating for a few minutes, and then starting to visualize that inner child, connecting with them. Maybe they're standing in front of you, maybe you're holding them, maybe you're hugging them, and being able to start to speak with them, connect with them, feel what they're feeling, and start to work through some of these things that come up. And a lot of times, a lot of emotions can come up with this kind of work. And it's not easy, right? I think a lot of times we want to move away from this kind of emotional stuff because our ego's like, well, why are we going there? I'm here, I'm fine. And you're not fine because there's an inner child that's wounded, right? So I think a lot of times it's this visualization work can be super powerful. And I found this to be a huge way to heal and to connect with that inner child. And this doesn't have to be something you do every day. This could be something you do once a week or once a month or once every 2 weeks, and being able to do that work for a bit and that visualization, because it feels more real. It feels more connected, especially if someone's guiding you through that. And this is kind of what I felt compelled to do, that meditation / visualization, because it's helped me in the past too with hypnosis and with visualization work. And it was super powerful. It brought up things I never imagined and brought up these emotions that were just like, whoa, right in my face, right? And it was beautiful. And I think more of us need to get in touch with that if we can. The visualization work could kind of look something like this, like you closing your eyes, sitting in a comfortable position, maybe even laying down and doing some nice breath work, and then imagining yourself kind of falling into this very deep, relaxed state. And this can be in different ways. It can be, sometimes there's waterfalls, sometimes there's staircases. It's kind of you going down and relaxing and going into this more subconscious state. And then from there, you're going to kind of imagine this safe space, right? This space that feels warm and welcoming. And then your inner child kind of joining you within that space and that environment, and you being able to ask them questions and connect with them and see how they're feeling and say to them anything that you need to say. So this is going to be exactly what I'm going to walk you through on that meditation. I don't want to include it here just in case. I want you to be able to just hit play, do the meditation, and then come out of it, instead of having to go all through this kind of podcast and listen till the end to have access to it. So I'll definitely do it separately so you guys can experience that if you're feeling called to do that. So these are just some quick tips, some quick ways that you can connect with your inner child. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be you writing them letters, journaling, visualization, even during a meditation. There's tons of meditations on YouTube that help you connect to your inner child, just as the one I'm going to create. So feel free to just kind of do a little search on YouTube or Google. And of course, if you want to work through some of this stuff within an Akashic Records reading, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always here to assist, or if you have any questions with any of the things that have come up. And I guess a good question that I would kind of send you all is to really maybe like some homework. I think this would be good, because I think all of us need that little push with this inner child. It's sit today with yourself, or this week, whenever you feel or you have time, and do a little bit of breath work. Do a 5-minute meditation, and then start to connect with that inner child, imagining them in front of you and really asking them, is there anything that I need to look at? Is there anything that I need to help you with? And starting to just open up those avenues of communication with them, and creating more of this solid relationship. Because many of times what I feel and I see with readings, it's that inner child is just acting out in fear, anger, rage sometimes, and wounding that sometimes we don't even understand why we're acting a specific way. And sometimes this is why we're also in this loop, right? This repetitive loop and this self-sabotaging that can come up so often. Doing that maybe, and then I want you to sit down and journal for like 15 minutes and write down any emotions, any feelings that came up while you were connecting with that inner child of yours. And from there, feel free to just move forward in doing any of these things that I've mentioned, and starting to slowly unravel what's inside of us, starting to really make sure that we just incorporate this inner child, because the more we can do that, the freer we're going to be. And we don't want to live with these scars, this wounding, right? It's not to our benefit, and we're unconsciously acting out in so many ways. All of us, I can guarantee every single one of us are in some way or another. And once we become more conscious of that inner child, we're going to be able to realize where we're getting triggered, realize where those things are coming up, and be able to liberate ourselves from those and say, oh, okay, that's my inner child. Let me just speak with them for a moment, and let me just connect with them so that they know I'm here, and that there's no reason for them to be worried, or there's no reason for them to feel unloved. I'm here for you. And this is so liberating, being able to live this life presently from this more balanced, emotionally balanced, but also just feeling more in tune with ourselves and feeling like we can connect with ourselves. I do feel like a lot of us might not be fully connecting with ourselves, partly because of our ego, like we say, but our inner child could be part of that. What if our inner child doesn't feel like they're good enough? What if our inner child was abused in some way, maybe verbally abused, and was constantly told that they're not good enough, they won't amount to anything, that things will never be okay, and that they're never going to create the life that they want? Maybe not in those words, but that's what they feel. How are we ever going to connect to ourselves, our higher self, create this abundance and just this amazing life that we want when we're constantly deep down inside feeling like we're not enough ever? It's just not going to happen. We need to release all of that for us to become these whole, beautiful, amazing versions of ourselves. And we all have that. It is there. We just need to do the work. And it's not going to come on its own. We can ask for assistance. We can get people to help us through that, of course. But most of that work you need to do on your own. It's beautiful. It's very vulnerable, but at the same time, it's going to help us release all of this pain that we have inside of ourselves so that we can start to be truly ourselves, authentically ourselves. And that's just really why we're here, right? Allowing ourselves, giving ourselves permission to do that is just so important. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this little episode about the inner child and inner child healing. I hope this resonates with some of you. If you have any questions, of course, make sure to reach out. We're here to help you with anything. And we'll be back next week with a new episode. We hope you guys have a great week, and we'll talk to you really soon. Love you guys. Bye.